Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be covering over the top 10 best decks as we approach the Vancouver and Fortaleza regional championships going on this weekend. Whether you're playing in those events, watching the events, or hanging out at your local game store, this is a Prismatic Evolutions legal event. We're not post-rotation yet, so we're going to see a lot of the same decks that saw success at the regionals in Merida, the Puerto Rico special event, and of course, the European International Championships. Which deck's going to be out on top? Let us know in the comments. It does help boost the YouTube algorithm. All the decks are going to be available in the pinned comment. And of course, myself and a handful of other Shuffle Squad members are going to be at Vancouver Regionals. So if you see at the event, be sure to come up and say hi. We're not too busy to have a discussion and hang out with some fans of the community. Yeah, let's jump into our number 10 picks, see exactly how it goes. Kicking things off at number 10 this week is going to be Gouging Fire EX. I slightly updated this list to cut a Night Stretcher and go with a second NTV. Might have been a few other changes here and there, but nothing too crazy. I think that Gouging Fire EX seems incredibly well positioned, where there's a few decks that are weak to fire type Pokemon. We have Delphox V to snipe some Pokemon out there. And if this deck works, it just works. I think it really has the capabilities of having a deep run, at least possibly. So we'll have to see how the deck plays out at Vancouver Regionals, if anyone ends up picking this deck. But we did see at Merida Regionals how it came all the way to the finals. We might see the same thing, especially with Vancouver being a smaller regionals. And if you're going to the regionals in Brazil and Fortaleza, I could see it being the exact same case. So Gouging Fire appropriately positioned in the metagame. But if you have a little bit of luck on your side, I could see it having a lot of success. Should note that all of the lists are available in the pinned comment in the comment section, so you can copy and paste these right into PTCG Live. You can check out our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards and PTCGO Store. Let's see what we got going on at number 9. We'll see how this list goes. A lot of cool things. Let us know in the comments what you think your top 10 best decks are of the week and see if you're right. At number 9, we have Dragapult EX with Charizard EX. So we're actually adding this deck back onto the list. We saw Oscar Madsen come 9th place at the EUIC with this deck. And this is their exact deck list. I think it's the exact same 60. And reasonably, I just think having Charizard in the back, Dragapult in the front, and vice versa, having access to accelerate more energies, having access to having a backup attacker, like these are all things that are incredibly strong. And I think we're going to see a handful of people maybe play this deck at the tournaments. You've seen players do well with this deck before. I think there's really opportunities here. I can also see other Dragapult variants like Straight Dragapult, Dragapult Dusknoir, etc. doing well. So it's really hard when they're like very similar builds. But right now I think that this is worthwhile of its own spot on the list this week as we approach Vancouver Regionals. At number 8, we have Lost Zone Box. Lost Zone Box being down a little bit because Dragapult is pretty much everywhere. And I think that it's a tough matchup, even though you have the Gigas and a few other techs. It can be tough. I think this is Grant Manley's list from EUIC, where I think they made top 16. Really just like one of those decks, if you dodge the right matchups, or if you're able to maybe outplay a not so great Dragapult player, this deck could be one of the absolute best choices for the events. I think Lost Zone Box is either like BDIF or lower top 10, and right now I'm going with lower top 10. I could see some top level players playing this deck. I could see them having a decent run. I could also see people just having a rough time when it comes to Lost Zone Box. So that's where it's at. Number 8. Let's see what we got going on at number 7. At number 7 this week, we have Miraidon EX. Now, the build that I'm going with is Owen Dalgard list that they played at Puerto Rico special event and EUIC. I like the Minior with the Lost Vacuum technology that they have. I think both Jeremy Gamilla and Owen Dalgard hosted a masterclass on Metafy going over some of the changes. But basically, you can Minior, bring it up active if you got Mawile against a Gardevoir, gives you an out against Snorlax, and if you Minior, bring it up active, free retreat out of Latias, you can then use Lost Vacuum, bump out of your own area 0, then get it back with Night Stretcher to do it again. So some really cool plays, Magnemite plus Zapdos for Badoo damage, Zapdos for Archaludon, like all the techs are here, and it's the making of like a perfect Miraidon list. So if you're still in the mood to run Miraidon, not necessarily the best position deck, not necessarily the worst position deck, just a really good deck in the metagame that's going to be part of the lower top 10, this would be the list that I recommend. At number 6, we have Gardevoir EX. This is the build that Rowan Stavenau and Tanner Hurley played at EUIC. I think that it's just kind of my default list right now. I like the unfair stamp. I like the tech choice that they have. Gardevoir is in this weird position where it did not do particularly well at EUIC. Did not live up to the hype that it had. It's definitely one of the more upper decks. Like you can see that we're kind of like branching out of the lower top 10 decks to the middle of the pack. I think Gardevoir EX definitely falls into that category where I think the right pilot could take the deck with the right techs and all that stuff and take it to a strong finish. If you're a Gardevoir player, you probably have your own list. Maybe you consulted with Henry Chow, Josh Frank, some of the Gardevoir players that nonstop play Guardy. I just don't see a world where Gardevoir is that deck for Vancouver. I could be wrong. Gardevoir is the type of deck that could pop off, but right now we got it on at number 6. Let's see what we have breaking into the top 5. And again, I'll do a call and response. Give this video a like, share, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what you think the top 5 best decks in the format are. All that stuff really helps boost our YouTube algorithm, promoting our channel to more people. So even though it doesn't sound like a lot, it does really help out our channel. Let's jump into our number 5 deck. We're halfway through the list this week. At number 5 this week, we have the Dango, taking Xander Pro's top 4 list from EUIC. I think we're going to see a handful of players play this deck based off of the success before. I don't know. It's one of those cases where Dango sees some play sometimes because it has a cult-like following, and then other times it just doesn't. It's really one of those decks similar to Gouging Fire. If it sets up, it just goes, and if it doesn't set up, it doesn't really go. Making It Rain is well positioned into a handful of the decks in the top 5 or so, and I think like that's really going to allow it to kind of be sticky into the metagame, whereas in other cases Dango does not have that many decks in the top 5. So as things have kind of shifted up recently, I think Dango is still a very good call for Vancouver and Fortaleza based off of the metagame after EUIC. Let's see what we've got going on at number 4. At number 4 this week, we have our Chaladon EX with the Toadscruel technology. Toadscruel is really one of those cards that it's not uncommon to see in this list, maybe not necessarily nowadays, but it has been a tech in the past. What are we swapping with it? Well, a lot of it's going to be Dango. There's a few other cards that we can swap with Slime Mold Colony that could end up hurting our Chaladon. I think with Gardevoir going down a little bit and Dango going up a little bit, the Toadscruel does really help out when it comes down to any kind of situation that we might run into that could be helpful for Slime Mold Colony to shut things off. Minorly adjusted my day 2 EUIC list that I think is otherwise pretty perfect for the metagame, and that's where we're at. Nothing too special, just going Metal Defender 220 over and over again, and then we have access to black belts training. I don't think we need as many black belts if we're going with Toadscruel, which would help in the Goldango matchup a lot, but I'm sure there's got other use cases. This is what I'd recommend, or something pretty close to this. Any of the lists from EUIC towards the top, very good for our Chaladon. At number 3, we have Lugia flying high. Lugia having access to Summoning Star, bringing back those chops, and then loading up some energies. The 2/2 Chinchino is really going to be, because we got a lot of tanky Mons in the top 5. So if we look at the Archaladon, we can knock that out, having access to a single prizer that can knock out Dango. And of course, if that doesn't work, we have access to Weird Ear, and Gigas is going to be a good call for any of the Terra Pokemon like Zard, like Dragapult, or just anything that you could really hit with it. I think Lugia is going to be really the surprise deck of this weekend. Vancouver is really going to be one of the last pre-rotation events, at least in North America, that's going to really see a lot of players bring out these V-Stars for the last time before they get tossed into rotation. And I mean, Expand is not really a super huge format right now, so it's either you play it now or you're just playing it locally, and a lot of people want to give it that one last shot on their Limitless page. So we're not necessarily at post-rotation yet. That's why decks like Lugia are going to see some success. And of course, it's just well positioned into our current metagame after EUIC, especially with Miraidon and Gardevoir both going down. The way that the rest of the metagame's looking pretty good for Lugia. We only have a couple decks left, so let's see what we got going on in our top 2. At number 2 this week, we have Cloth Terrapagos. Now, we saw this deck win the European International Championships. I don't think I've changed up anything too much from this list. I think that having access to Monkey Dory is fantastic. A lot of decks are playing Monkey Dory to move damage counters from Dragapult. So in a lot of cases, we're trying to counter the decks that did very well, and Dragapult was really the runaway success from EUIC. Cloth seems well positioned into our current formats. Nothing's really changed from EUIC for Cloth. I mean, its matchup against Lugia goes back and forth, but I think it's really, I personally think it's Cloth favored, if I had a hunch, because you can play around Gift Energy and Legacy Energy and all that cool stuff. Now, this deck can sometimes be an inconsistent pile. That's really one of the things that's holding it back from being the #1 deck, but all the cool Pokemon that you get to play are typically going to be a bonus, and I would expect to see a few people just copying the list that won EUIC and just rocking it out at Vancouver. But it's not our #1 deck of the week, and I'm sure a lot of you can guess it, but our #1 deck of the week is Dragapult Dusknoir. I think that Natalie Millar's list was a week or two ahead of its time by having access to Temple of Sinnoh earlier than Lugia was prevalent in the format. Now that Lugia is kind of on the incline, I think having Temple of Sinnoh is fantastic, whereas otherwise I would have thought Lost Vacuum would have been a little bit better before. I really like playing this list. It is smooth, and it just has enough options to kind of deal with the meta game. It's one of those middle of the road decks where you don't necessarily just demolish another deck in front of you, but you certainly have lines of play and actions. And if you watched any of Natalie Millar's play from the European International Championships, you could just see how masterful you could play this deck. I think that this is probably going to be the most played deck and arguably one of the more successful decks at Vancouver. So watch out for Dragapult this weekend, whether it's Dragapult straight up or maybe the version with like Blood Moon, this version, or Dragapult Charizard. I think all three Dragapult variants are going to do absolutely fantastic this weekend at Vancouver and at Fortaleza. I had some closing thoughts, so let's jump into those. There we have it, another week with Dragapult on top. I really think that Dragapult is probably going to end up being the most played deck and arguably going to be one of the more successful decks. Maybe there's going to be a deck that counters it. We might see another Goldango situation at EUIC, or maybe we'll just have Cloth win again. But these are some absolute fantastic decks, and I hope that everyone's enjoyed watching this video and learning more about the metagame. I think going forward, I'm probably going to be covering post-rotation metagame, covering the Japanese metagame, metagames that I'm developing with my friends, using Scarlet Violet on. So if that sounds great, let me know if there's any decks you want us to cover. And again, the top 10s are probably going to switch to that going forward. We'll have to see exactly. I don't know exactly how much run time we have, but I do want to make sure that there's some content out there for all of y'all to enjoy. If you're trying to up your game, whether you're playing at Atlanta, Monterey, a handful of events, hit me up for some coaching at metafy.gg/@ZachLasage. I totally love to help you up your game. And of course, if you haven't already, let us know in the comments what kind of content you want to see. Give this video a like, share, subscribe, and we will catch all of y'all up next with some more great content. I think Blake Ray and I filmed some post-rotation gameplay, tabletop edition, so check that out. Lots of great content on Shuffle lately, and I appreciate all the love on the channel. Take it easy, y'all. Peace out and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes.
旅の始まりは常に道への一歩である。それは闇へと続く。初めの一歩を踏み出すには勇気がいる。そして旅の終わりには旅を始めた時の自分とは別人になっているかもしれない。旅に出よう。物語の次の章がお主を待っている。将軍の道を歩め。侍の箱と共に。アルティメットガードが送る冒険の第一章。 刀将軍の道近日発売。
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed the content that we have today, and maybe you'll click on one of these other videos, enjoy those videos too. If you haven't already, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what video you want to watch next. Until next time, we'll catch up with all y'all later. Have yourself a great day.